Port-au-Prince, Haiti, 1994. It's a sweltering day in Port-au-Prince, and the small mob in front of you baying for American blood is only turning up the heat. These are not ordinary Haitians. They are the murderers and thugs from one of the death squads, riled up by their leaders to oppose the arrival of the USS Allen County. They are mostly armed with machetes, some proudly wielding AK-47s, including one man with a long scar down his cheek who keeps firing into the air. One only has a broom, which he makes up for by waving it energetically in the air, while another drops his trousers and waves his bare bottom at the Americans. Between the mob and the USS Harlan County, there is only Vicky Huddleston, Deputy Chief of Mission, and yourself, her aide. You're not unduly worried. There are 700 US soldiers on board that state-of-the-art ship, designed to go toe-to-toe with the best in the Soviet Navy. They could easily disperse the mob. But the Harlan hasn't tried to land. It's just been sailing up and down. Maybe it's waiting for orders from DC? Then, to your amazement, and then your horror, the battleship slowly turns around and heads back the way it came. The mob cheers and jeers. Their leader suddenly arrives now it's safe and shouts, "See how the cowardly Americans flee! The might of Haiti! The might of you!" The man with the broom raises it proudly with two hands. All you can think is that this is yet another humiliation for the US, so soon after the disaster in Mogadishu. I'm your host, James Barton. Welcome to Forgotten Wars.
This country is at war with Germany.
Today, our armed forces joined our NATO allies in airstrikes against Serbian forces.
Eagle 1, first strike, you have permission to engage the target.
In the first few hours after our servicemen went to the rescue of young Americans and of democracy in Grenada,
Damals uns ausgebildet. Wollen diese 4 Jahre nützen.
Hello everyone, welcome to the show. Today, we're continuing our two-part series into America's various invasions of Haiti. Last time, we covered the US occupation from 1915 to 1934. I would recommend that you listen to this because it gives you some important background, but if you don't want to, this episode does work as a standalone as well. Today we're covering Operation Uphold Democracy, as Haitians endured horrific violence and repression after a military coup. President Bill Clinton hesitantly authorizes an invasion that would reveal all the pitfalls of peacekeeping. Behind the scenes, there was also a tangled legacy of cartels, cocaine, and the CIA that's never been completely explained or investigated. Haiti had originally been a prosperous French colony before liberating itself in history's only successful slave revolt. However, Haiti never had much luck after its heroic origins. Racked by poverty and instability, it was then occupied by its huge northern neighbour from 1915 to 1934. After the US Marines left, the American-created army dominated politics through weak puppet presidents. Eventually, though, one of their supposed puppets became their master. Francois Papadoc Duvalier took power in 1957, becoming one of the Caribbean's most violent and corrupt dictators, who would later pass on his throne to his son, Baby Doc. While the father and son duo looted the country, they spread fear throughout the nation with rumours of them being powerful voodoo priests. Their henchmen were called the Tom-Tom Macoute, the Bogeymen, one of the most evil state militias in history. Their favourite tactic for dealing with opponents was necklacing or Pierre Lebrun. A tire was placed around the victim's neck after their hands had been tied behind their back, and then the tire was set alight. This was all known outside of Haiti, but they still received millions in US aid as an anti-communist bulwark in the Caribbean. Then, the world changed. The late 80s and early 90s were a great time of optimism, at least in the West. The Cold War slowly came to an end. The Soviet Union disintegrated. Liberal democratic capitalism seemed to triumph. Francis Fukuyama even boldly predicted the end of history. Every nation was going to become a democracy soon, even China. Free trade was the wave of the future. There'd be no more great power competition. Looking back from 2025, when this podcast is being recorded, with Russia still fighting in Ukraine, tariffs are all the rage, and China is still a highly repressive dictatorship, it does all seem very naive. Even at the time, cracks were beginning to appear. With the world unfrozen, brutal dictatorships that had been tolerated, as long as they were good anti-communists, began to lose the funding and support that kept them in power. Such was the case in Haiti. Without US aid, the game was up, and Baby Doc was overthrown and fled to France. A comfortable exile assured by the $900 million he had stolen from the treasury. As Haiti struggled to return to democracy, the army once again became the biggest roadblock. They'd been sidelined under the Duvaliers and starved of funds. Ironically, this has actually ended up making them stronger than ever. They had found a new sugar daddy to shower them with cash. The Colombian cartels of Medellin, and especially Cali. We're getting low on fuel. We'll need to land somewhere soon, you say to your co-pilot, Carlos. You're flying across the Caribbean Sea in a small aircraft filled to the brim with the finest cocaine in all of Colombia, destined for Miami. It's your first flight. A mixture of excitement and fear sends adrenaline pumping through your veins as your heart races. Carlos is more experienced and casually says, "Don't worry about it. We can land in Haiti. They'll look after us." Haiti? Aren't they a US ally? The drug enforcement agency's there. We'll be arrested. Carlos smirks. Trust me. After landing on a Haitian airfield and disembarking, armed Haitian army soldiers appear. You freeze, but Carlos laughs and shouts, "Hey, Jean, can't you be filled up? We have a long trip ahead." The Haitian officer who seems to be in charge smiles. "Bonjour, Monsieur Carlos. Of course, everything's been paid for. We have refreshments while you wait. If you want a woman, they can be provided too." "What about the DEA?" you blurt out. Jean just laughs loudly. "They have been banned from this area. They can't do anything without our say-so." Stunned, you let Carlos guide you away. He is grinning ear from ear as he says, "Told you, money talks. The military's basically our partners. It's a criminal paradise." Each year, Haiti became the transit point for nearly 50 tons of cocaine, worth more than $1 billion, pumping $200 million into the bloody maw of the Haitian military. 1,000 Colombian expats had arrived, all with fake passports. A prominent cartel member even opened a luxury casino that somehow managed to churn out $100 million worth of profits a week, despite barely having any customers and Haiti being one of the poorest countries in the world. Sounds completely legit to me. Nothing to see here. Move along. Meanwhile, the profits of cocaine were having a lethal effect on the army. First of all, they were now determined not to allow a transition to democracy. Secondly, it provoked rabid infighting among the Ossecours. In the late 80s, Haiti suffered a coup every year as the various cliques fell out or sought a greater share of the drug profits. The career of Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Claude Paul shows how close Haiti was to becoming a failed narco-state. He controlled the troops in the capital of Port-au-Prince, a powerful role as his favour was needed for any successful coup attempt. He was so deeply involved with the cartels that in 1988 he was even charged in Miami with being a drug smuggler. An international incident then resulted when he defied the US, promising to personally kill any American who tried to arrest him. To prevent any drift towards democracy, he committed multiple massacres. His forces were so violent that the elections in 1987 were postponed, while he even shot up a crowd attending Mass in an attempt to kill the priest. More on that one later. By 1988, he was virtually the shadow ruler of Haiti, before being mysteriously poisoned. His wife was arrested, her motive allegedly being a dispute over a failed drug deal. More likely, he was killed by his rivals in the military. As the coup and murder merry-go-round among the military elite sped up, Haiti's latest strongman called for free elections and briefly withdrew the army from politics. This wasn't an altruistic act. He was facing large-scale protests and was deathly afraid of his own officers and soldiers killing him, so he was seeking a way out. Haiti's first truly free election brought priest John Bertrand Aristide to power with a whopping 67% of the vote. Aristide had been a long-time opponent of both the Duvaliers and the military, standing up for the poor and running an orphanage. This was enough to paint a massive target on his back. Only Fidel Castro in the Caribbean has survived more failed assassination attempts. The worst was the St. Jean Bosco massacre in 1988. The king of coups, Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Claude Paul, had hired 100 former Tom-Tom recruits to storm Aristide's church while he was performing Mass. You're late for Mass as you race towards the church. Your mum is going to kill you at this rate. As you approach the doors, military vehicles suddenly drive up, but it's not soldiers who get out. They wear no uniforms. Dressed in shabby clothes, they only stand out due to the identical red bands tied around their arms. That, and the coldness of their eyes, and the weapons they carry. Makoots, it's the bogeymen. You have to warn the congregation. You must find your mum. As you race inside, shouting, "The Makoots are here!" machine gun fire starts. And you feel splinters of wood hitting your face. It is chaos inside the church as the men burst in, screaming, "Give us the priest or die!" They shoot at anything that moves. Suddenly, someone grabs you from behind. Thankfully, it's your mother, her face ashen with fear. Frantically, she drags you out of the church for a back entrance, and you flee through the streets. As you look back, the church is on fire, while others who are trying to escape are attacked by Makoots with machetes. Did they get Aristide? Is he safe, you think? 17 died and 77 were injured for the crime of attending a mass with Aristide as priest. Somehow he managed to escape the carnage. Having failed to kill this troublesome priest, he was now their boss. But the generals and coups were not going to fade away quietly. Aristide started annoying some very powerful people. He began investigating those who had made vast fortunes under the Duvaliers, but also cracking down on the drug trade. With their wealth and power threatened, the old guard struck back. The new head of the army, Brigadier General Raoul Cédras, launched a coup. France's ambassador to Haiti was one of the first to see armoured cars moving in on President Aristide's Port-au-Prince home. He raced to the house and managed to pull the president into his bulletproof car, but not before the soldiers had killed one of Aristide's bodyguards. On a frantic ride to the presidential palace, his suit, splattered with his bodyguard's blood, watched as soldiers fired at civilians. At the palace, the president was suddenly arrested by Cédras and his goons. They were going to necklace him in true Haitian style, but frantic pressure from the French, American, and Venezuelan governments saved his life. Instead, he went into exile, continuing his fight against the military from abroad. The American government was divided over how to respond. The administration of President George Bush Sr. refused to recognize the junta and slapped on sanctions. Soon, what was left of the Haitian economy had crumbled, and it truly became a narco-state. Billions in cocaine openly flowed through its borders, with no pretense from the Haitian military of trying to stop it. Other parts of the US government, however, supported the coup, at least from the shadows. While America hadn't organized or directed the coup, it was deeply entangled with the forces behind it. Cédras himself, a member of the mixed-race elite with one of the strongest jaws I'd ever seen, had been trained at the School of the Americas. Based in the Panama Canal Zone until it was forced to move to Fort Benning, this school taught multiple generations of Caribbean and Latin American soldiers how to crush counterinsurgencies, with multiple dictators, torturers, and drug lords among its proud alumni. Allegedly, he was only a front man himself. The real force behind the coup was the Haitian intelligence services. They had been set up by the CIA to take on the drug trade. Instead, as has so often happened with the war on drugs, they had become thoroughly corrupted and allied with the cartels. It has even been alleged that CIA agents were present at their headquarters when the coup occurred. At the centre of this murky nexus of drugs and spies was a cocaine-snorting, self-infatuated madman and media whore, Emmanuel Toto Constant. Constant was a leading figure in the new junta, and he was also a paid CIA agent throughout this time. With the new regime incredibly unpopular and having no legitimacy, Colonel Patrick Collins of the US Defense Intelligence Agency gave him some practical advice, shall we say. He should form a paramilitary group to battle Aristide's supporters, using all those ex-Tonton Macoutes who were conveniently still looking for work. Founded with the Orwellian name of the Revolutionary Front for the Advancement and Progress of Haiti, or FRAF for short, hell was about to come to the island nation. After a pro-democracy protest in the district of Gonaives, the FRAF went from house to house, dragging out random people and forcing them to lie face down in open drains. They literally drowned people to death in raw sewage. Not content with that, they seized some rowboats and tried to shoot local fishermen at sea. As the FRAF raped, murdered and looted its way across the nation, Constant was telling all of this to his CIA handlers. Yet that didn't stop one of the spooks based at the embassy from writing a memo claiming the use of rape by FRAF was greatly exaggerated by the media. Anyway, it wasn't a big deal because, quote, rape itself was innate to Haitian culture, end quote. The world was already dealing with the after effects of the end of the Cold War. No one was interested in doing more than waiting for the sanctions to work. America's political class could even ignore the huge increase in cocaine flowing into Miami. There was one thing the politicians couldn't ignore, however. As Haiti turned into a living hell, hundreds of thousands of refugees took to the sea, trying to reach the US. 1992 was a presidential election year. Images of thousands of refugees in small boats trying to reach the States was a headache President George Bush just didn't need. Those that were picked up by the Coast Guard were sent to Guantanamo Bay. Yep, it was a holding area for refugees before Al-Qaeda terrorists. By May 1992, 11,300 Haitians were held at the military base. This would rise to 50,000 in just a few months. Then it really exploded. Bill Clinton won the 1992 election and had campaigned against forced repatriation of Haitian refugees. Once in office, he immediately U-turned on this, as most politicians do with their promises. To be fair, it was reaching crisis proportions. 30,000 to 50,000 refugees a week were trying to sail to the US. To stop the flow, he went to the heart of the problem, stabilizing Haiti. The Clinton administration began a strange trend of historical forgetfulness of America's previous involvement in Haiti. They acted like it was the first time the US had even noticed the small country south of Florida. Clinton advisor James Dobbins famously declared that this was a country that the United States had largely ignored for 200 years. As we have seen in this series, America has never ignored Haiti. The Haitian Army, intelligence services, and the FRAF were all, to some degree, American creations. Back in Haiti, the sanctions were having an effect. While drug cash was keeping the military brass in luxury, the country itself was collapsing around them. An oil embargo imposed in 1993 was particularly hurting the economy. Under pressure, the junta signed the Governor's Island Accord. Aristide would be allowed to return, but the military and their allies would be exempt from his control. US peacekeepers would retrain the army to make it more professional. No one seemed to remember that this army had already been trained by the US. It seemed a good deal. Crisis over. Right? Right? Not by a long shot. Cedras was playing for time. As the USS Harlan County sailed to Port-au-Prince with the peacekeepers on board, plans were put into motion. The mob in our opening dramatization appeared to welcome them. They were just as comical as I described, no match for the Harlan or the US troops. In fact, if a US soldier had waved his fist at them, they probably would have run for it. Why did the ship turn around? Was the man with a broom really so scary? It was events far from Haiti that suddenly made Clinton so risk-averse. Days earlier, 18 US soldiers had been killed, and 2 Black Hawk helicopters shot down in Mogadishu, Somalia, during a raid that went wrong. Before the TV cameras of the world, Somali militiamen dragged American bodies through the streets of the capital. Unwilling to risk more casualties and fed inaccurate information on how well armed the mob were, Clinton told the ship to head home. A star was now born as Constant mugged for the cameras and boasted of the strength of his militia. He became the mad and murderous face of the junta. While all this was going on, the man who had just humiliated the US and was now shouting death to America for the cameras was still a paid CIA agent having weekly meetings with his handlers. This is such a mad period of history. Emboldened by the supposed US weakness, the FRAF went on a killing spree against Aristide's supporters, both real and imagined. Guy Maleri, a key ally of Aristide, was gunned down in an ambush. They then started targeting orphans, based on the logic that Aristide had once run an orphanage, so they must be loyal to him. The large amounts of cocaine they were taking were really destroying those brain cells. A new Haitian proverb was coined in these dark days. If you die, you're guilty. Meanwhile, the CIA were openly running a full-scale disinformation campaign against Aristide. Ultra-conservative North Carolina Senator Jesse Helms, a leading opponent of Aristide, brought CIA analyst Brian Littell to Capitol Hill in October to brief selected senators and representatives on allegations that Aristide had been treated for mental illness. It turned out that the time during which the CIA report alleged Aristide was being treated at a Canadian hospital for mental illness, he was actually studying and teaching in Israel. For good measure, he was also alleged to be a drug addict. Littell also said he saw no evidence of oppressive rule in Haiti. On the day he said this, a FRAF member was photographed proudly showing off the severed head of an Aristide supporter to the press. Littell must have been putting his fingers in his ears and shutting his eyes very tightly indeed, if he thought there was no oppression in Haiti. Despite all this, the tide was turning against the junta. The refugees kept coming in record numbers. 60,000 Haitians marched in New York, calling for intervention, while writer Randall Robinson did a 27-day hunger strike to highlight the junta's crimes. The US Navy blockaded Haiti. The United Nations Security Council authorized the use of military force. An invasion was on the way. In these dark times, there was some comic relief from the new president of Haiti. Cedras and his cronies let puppet presidents be the frontmen, while they ruled from the shadows. But their latest candidate was really scraping the barrel. Emile Jeanneret believed he was a Huguen, or senior Voodoo priest, who had already defeated Aristide on the spiritual level. He cheerfully announced to the nation that the spirits had told him that any invasion would fail miserably, but just to make sure, he was waging a spirit war against the US in general and Bill Clinton in particular. As one close friend of Jeanneret's revealed, he operates on a spiritual plane, while Clinton operates only on the physical level of the universe. The spiritual beats the physical every time. Remember when Al-Qaeda went through a phase of claiming any misfortune that affected the West was down to them? Whether it was blackouts in California or floods in the UK, they had planned it all. The chief Huguen of Haiti began to do the same thing. A disgruntled trucker crashes a stolen Cessna aircraft into the White House's south lawn. It was the spirits. Clinton's bimbo eruptions, faulty wiring at the White House, and the brief sacking of a press secretary were all put down to voodoo magic. Clinton should have remembered this when the Monica Lewinsky scandal occurred. Don't blame me, blame the spirits. In this hidden war, America suffered a major blow when the USS Monsoon, one of the smaller US naval ships in Haitian waters, ran aground in Port-au-Prince harbour in full view of much of the city. US officials said that the harbour was improperly charted. Jeanneret blamed Voodoo. I'll let you decide. Cedras himself just didn't believe that the US would invade, remaining defiant. If I die in the next few hours or days, that would be better than leaving my country in dishonour and leaving my children with a dishonourable name, he proclaimed, before threatening that Haiti would become a new Vietnam or Somalia for America. As Haitian-born historian Robert Fatton says, They believed that they were immune and that Clinton was playing politics, and that they could stay in power, and eventually things would be resolved without the return of Aristide. After all, they were on the payroll of the CIA. How do you negotiate with people who are actually being paid by the people who want the change? As September the 16th, 1994 rolled around, 25,000 American troops were ready to invade. A last-minute diplomatic effort was made to prevent violence. Ex-President Jimmy Carter, Senator Sam Nunn, and General Colin Powell flew out to negotiate with the junta. Powell, in particular, was their secret weapon. He had helped train Cedras when he was at the School of the Americas. They knew each other well. Yet still, negotiations were deadlocked. Hours before the invasion would begin, Powell tried one last throw of the dice. Everyone is tired as they sit around the table. They've been talking for hours, but still the Haitians remain defiantly stubborn. Cedras glares at his American counterparts. The blood of Haiti runs in my veins. I will not leave. We have jungles to hide in, and mountains no white man has ever been. This land will swallow you up if you dare to come here. Behind the bravado, you can tell he still doesn't believe an invasion will happen. Powell stares coolly back at the ranting general, waiting for him to run out of steam. Then he just says, "I have something to show you." A TV set is wheeled in, and soon Powell is narrating as the sheer power of the US force heading towards Haiti is revealed. And that general is the 82nd Airborne, who spearheaded our invasions of Grenada and Panama. Now I must inform you that this isn't a live feed. This is a video from 2 hours ago. By sunset tomorrow, we'll control Haiti. Make your decision, General. Cedras looks horrified, the blood drained from his face. After all the bluster, Cedras and his cronies gave in. Like so many Haitian leaders before them, they were flown out of the country into exile. He remains free and unpunished for his crimes in Panama. With the last-minute surrender, part of the US invasion force turned back. The rest continued on, but had to make the adjustment of arriving as peacekeepers rather than invaders. The State Department issued the following unhelpful advice to the soldiers about to occupy a foreign land. You won't know until you step off the helicopter whether you're going to have to shoot your way into town or whether there's going to be somebody there inviting you to lunch. Thankfully, the Americans were met with enthusiasm and cheers from most Haitians. But 3 terrible decisions were made that would waste this opportunity for a better path for Haiti and the general optimism the occupation had created. The first was that because of the last-minute deal, the decree from Washington was that the Haitian army was to be treated as a partner, not an enemy. This, while morally dubious, was at least understandable. We just need to look at Iraq after 2003 for what happens when armed men are suddenly unemployed. But for some mysterious reason, this was also extended to the FRAF. They went from being described as evil thugs and the bane of Haiti to being declared a political party, not a murderous paramilitary group, which would be a loyal opposition to Aristide. This was complete rubbish, and we have to wonder what machinations were going on behind the scenes back in DC. In practice, this meant a low-level civil war broke out across Haiti. By day, mobs hunted down isolated FRAF members for their crimes. Reporter Bob Shakokis recalled seeing the following scene in the city of Cape Haitian. You are an American Marine guarding a checkpoint, and you hear a wailing and a screaming the likes of which you've never heard before. Ahead, you see a huge mob of Haitians chasing a man covered in blood. He runs towards your checkpoint. As you raise your rifle, he shouts in broken English, "I am Fraff! I am a Fraff!" You let him cower behind your fellow Marines as the mob circles the checkpoint. Your interpreter reveals the man is wanted for rape and murder in the service of the former junta. The crowd screams for him to be handed over, chanting, "Give us the macoute! Give us the macoute!" You look at your sergeant. He shakes his head. "Rules of engagement say we have to protect him." The macoute suddenly regains his swagger, jeering at the mob. You grit your teeth. Why did we invade if it was to protect scum like this? Countless scenes similar to this occurred across the country. To many Haitians, it seemed as though America had forgotten why they had invaded in the first place. While the mobs ruled the day, by night, the macoutes came out in force to kill their opponents, leaving the bloody evidence of their crimes at road junctions to spread fear. It says a lot that it was still a virtual death sentence to publicly say Aristide's name during most of the occupation. The American embassy then arranged a spectacle so darkly comic that it shocked even the most cynical of observers. Emmanuel Constant, the Fraff leader, was going to give a press conference at the insistence of his handlers. He announced for the cameras that violence no longer has a place in our society, then proclaimed he was going to run for election. The effect was rather ruined by a huge crowd of Haitians yelling, "Murderer! Murderer!" As the Americans literally did a deal with the devil, they made their second mistake. After Somalia and Black Hawk Down, both the White House and the Pentagon desperately didn't want any casualties. Force protection became an end to itself, the most important mission of all. Stuck in their camps, only allowed out at heavily armed patrols, they were completely unable to prevent the civil war raging outside or maintain law and order. Instead, they had to rely on the Haitian army and police, the same forces that had been repressing the people for years. Crowds were dispersed with beatings and gunshots fired overhead, just like the good old days of military rule. Not until very late in the day were the rules of engagement loosened and US soldiers allowed to patrol regularly. In Cape Haitian, they were even attacked by those peace-loving Democrats, the Fraff, but after 10 of their members were killed, they gave the Americans a wide berth. As chaos reigned, even the attempts to get the country working again failed due to time constraints and really general ignorance about the country. One US official, speaking to the mayor of Cape Haitian, asked for the tax records so they could collect back taxes to pay to fix the roads. The mayor shrugged his shoulders and replied, "There are none. We don't provide any services, and the people don't pay." The US official just stared at him in amazement. In the absence of a tax base, instead, toll booths would be created to repair the roads. But the Haitian police were too afraid to do the job of running the booths. That's how US Special Forces soldiers ended up collecting tolls on Haitian roads. This would end up causing the only US fatality of the whole operation. Army Sergeant First Class Gregory Cardeau was collecting tolls when a pickup truck carrying a former Haitian Army officer, Major Aurel Frederick, and his driver sped through without paying. After being chased by US troops, the pickup truck finally stopped, only for Frederick to leap out and start shooting. Cardeau was killed and another soldier wounded before he was gunned down in turn. According to his driver, Frederick had thought he was going to be arrested for his crimes, not asked to pay a toll. Really, the whole thing's ridiculous. There's no way you should have special forces soldiers taking tolls on highways. By March 1995, Operation Uphold Democracy was over. The press declared a glorious and virtually bloodless foreign policy success for the Clinton administration. Wait a minute, you may be thinking. I mentioned 3 big mistakes, but only talked about 2. Well, the last one was right at the end. Clinton extracted a price from Aristide for his return. The 1990s were the peak era for believing free trade and open markets would solve every problem. Inevitably, Haiti was forced to abandon all its tariffs. Haitian industry was virtually wiped out, while its farmers couldn't compete with subsidized American food. The economy never recovered. Haiti became completely reliant on handouts from an increasingly reluctant world. The drug trade returned with a vengeance, arguably now worse than even under the dark days of Cedras. Aristide was able to abolish the army that had dominated Haiti's politics since 1934. But this being Haiti, even this had negative effects. Decades later, there was no army to stop heavily armed drug gangs parceling up the country, just an overmatched and lightly armed police force. The military may be gone, but the old elites still remained. Aristide struggled to govern the nation, eventually being overthrown in yet another coup. Throw in more occupation, a disastrous earthquake, and a president being assassinated by drug lords, and Haiti descended into a new hell, this time gang rule. As all this was going on, Haitians were waging another struggle, this time to bring Emmanuel Constant to justice. He had snuck out of the country to the US, using a tourist visa the embassy had conveniently forgotten to cancel. Openly living in Queens, New York, he was eventually arrested. After giving an interview to 60 Minutes, where he revealed he was a CIA asset and threatened to reveal more secrets, he was mysteriously released and allowed to stay in the US. Not till 2020 would he finally be deported back to Haiti to face justice. No lessons were really learned from this operation. When the latest crisis erupted in Haiti, a US official told the press that this is a country we've ignored and had little to do with for over 200 years. If history doesn't exactly repeat itself, it certainly does rhyme. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, subscribe, leave a review, or tell a friend. In our next episode, we're trying something a bit different. We'll explore the extraordinary life of Mad Mike Hall, the legendary and infamous Cold War mercenary. From leading a motley army of ex-Nazis and fortune hunters in the Congo as they looted and crushed a communist revolt, to his plan to overthrow the government of the Seychelles in probably the worst coup attempt ever, it is truly an amazing story. See you next time for more Forgotten Wars.